these basic concepts are more than enough. Okay, so let's start with the basics of machine learning today, and then there's one more thing I wanted to highlight. So coming to your EDA, right? So coming to your EDA. Okay, so the basic EDA steps are, the EDA itself is again an ocean. So there are so many plots in so many packages, right? So the basic idea you have to understand, like what is the motivation behind EDA, right? What is the motivation behind EDA? The motivation behind EDA is, right? So it's like, how do I explain? So it's like you have a land, right? So let's say you have a land and then you want to build a house, right? So you don't directly go and build, get cement and then build the house, right? So basically you take measurements, right? So first, okay, this is how my house will look like. So this is where my whatever bathroom or bedroom and like guest, and then this is my gate, and then this is the gap I'm going to give, right? So pictorial diagram. So basically the blueprint of your house, right? So blueprint of your house, where everything will go. So basically the sofa will go here, right? Now if I tell this in words, right? So if I explain, sir, in this the direction the house will be, this is where the sofa will be, we will not understand actually. We'll understand half of it, but we will not be able to completely grasp. Now always keep in mind, so EDA, which stands for exploratory data analysis, the motive of this, so the motive of EDA is basically, you can do EDA 100 plots also, there is no limit, but the motive of this is you need to start understanding how does each column represent, right? So let's say if you have 10 columns, right? So how does each column is represented. For example, so let's say if I have a column called age, right? So what is this? Generally I'll go with a histogram, right? So let's say this is the histogram. So the age will be starting, let's say, from 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and 50 years. So let's say this is how the age will look like. So let's say 20 years, and then 30 years, then 40 years, and then let's say 50 years is something like this, and then whatever 60, and then like 70, right? So this is a histogram. Now what information am I getting, right? So the majority of the values are between, let's say, 30, 40, and 50, right? So that information I got just by looking at it, or I can also write code and find the intervals where the majority is there, right? So that is also there. The main motive of doing EDA is to understand and get deeper insights about each of the columns, right? Right. So basically you have age. Let's say next you have gender. Let's say you have gender column, right? So which is a category there. So you can go with a pie chart, right? So the pie chart will look something like this. So let's say this is a pie chart. So let's say this is your male percentage. Okay. Let's say this is 40 percentage. Okay. And then females. Okay. So let's say this is 60 percentage. Okay, just by looking at this plot, I have some basic deeper insights that the gender column, majority of that is composed of females, and my like some less percentage is occupied by males. You can also do, let's say, df. You can also do df dot, don't do dot, you can also do df and then gender. You can also do df gender and then value counts, right? Dot value counts, that will also give you. But this pictorial diagram is like your deeper insights, right? So basically you can understand how much percentage just by looking at one shot, right? So now let's say if you have more than one categories, let's say you have four categories. So unemployment status, if you take unemployment status, so basically you have employed, let's say in contract, let's say in fired or something like that, and then let's say he's on hold, something like that, right? So when you create a pie chart, right, when you create a pie chart like that, so it will just give you a lot of information in one glimpse, right? Okay, this is the relationship, or this is how this particular column unemployment status is present, right? Now that is what your motive of EDA is. The motive of EDA should be that you gain more and more deeper insights, and you start understanding each column in a better manner. Okay, so these are the two plots you can start with when you are doing EDA, right? When you come to your, so this analysis is called your univariate analysis. What univariate analysis means is, you have column 1, you have column 2, and then you have column 3, right? So you go to this column, let's say this is continuous column, you build a histogram here, right? So you build a histogram. So this is your categorical column, you build a pie chart here, right? So let's say you build a pie chart here. Again, this is also a categorical column. So let's say you build another pie chart here, right? So this is a pie chart, right? Now what univariate analysis means, I am doing EDA per column base, right? At each column, like based on each column, I am doing EDA, right? So this is your univariate analysis. Now, if I explain bivariate, so if I come to bivariate analysis, so if I come to bivariate analysis, okay, if I come to bivariate, so let's say you have C1, let's say you have C1, C2, and C3, okay, and then you have C4 and then C5, right? So these are your 5 columns. These are your 5 columns, right? So this is a continuous column. This is a continuous column, and this is a continuous column. Now, what bivariate analysis means is, it just means that how does C1 change with respect to C2, right? What I mean by that is, so let's say this is age column and let's say this is salary column. So both of them are continuous column. One of the bivariate analysis is called one of the bivariate plots is basically your scatter plot, okay? On x-axis, you will plot age, okay? And y-axis, you will plot salary. What sort of distribution you'll get? You will get something like this. Right? So
the bivariate and the correlation are the same?
Correlation is a concept. Correlation is basically a concept. Correlation is basically to understand two things. So first is basically the nature. Is it positive or negative? Okay. Actually, let me explain. So let me finish this. So, and then second thing is it strong? Is it strong? Okay. Is it weak, or is it like no relationship? What this correlation Pearson coefficient, correlation basically small r will represent is these two things. Now, when you see here, this also gives you some idea, right? If you remember the question, if you remember yesterday, we did one question like this. I have shown you 3 plots and I asked you which among them has positive correlation, right? So what plots I have shown? The plots I have shown are called scatter plots, right? So scatter plot is basically you have a plot and then you scatter the data on that. So you throw the data, like you scatter them. So they start basically scatter and then fall on wherever their actual values are, right? So this is your scatter plot. A scatter plot will basically give you, yes, correlation, basic idea of correlation, yes. And also it also will, in general, it also will give you a high level information, right? So now let me tell you what that high level information means. So let's say this is your relationship between age and let's say salary, right? Now what you can see this. So as the age is increasing, the salary is sort of going in a square, right? So every year, I don't know, he's getting really good promotions or something. So you can see that the trend is basically that it is going way above, right? So basically, we'll see all these in coming classes, but this is one way of understanding that. Or let me explain one more simple example, you guys will understand. So let's say if I plot the scatter plot, right? So let's say as the number of days are increasing, the number of cases are increasing exponentially, right? So we all know that, right? So that is how basically. So what it means is your values will be something like this, right? So this is your exponential increase. Now by looking at these columns, so what is the first column? The days, right? So on x-axis I have the days, and y-axis I have the number of cases, right? So number of cases, right? Now, yes, of course, there is a strong positive correlation as the days are increasing, the cases are increasing. All that is fine, but visually also you can learn some more things, right? What is that you can learn? You can learn that this increase is exponential, right? This increase is exponential. Now, if I ask you, how did you say that? As you look at the shape of the graph, so if the shape of the graph in maths, this is all pure maths. So if it is increasing like this, like going up, like very suddenly, right? So like this is one exponential graph, right? So this means that, like if you guys notice, it took 4 days for 1 lakh cases, let's say, and it will take 2 days for another next 1 lakh cases, right? In one day, it will get 1 lakh. So this means that the growth is exponential, right? So that sort of behavior you can get in scatter plot, right? Not only correlation, it will give you some more information like, is the growth exponential, right? Is there any growth at all, right? Is there any, let me show you this one, you guys will understand. So let's say this is a scatter plot. Okay. So this is a scatter plot of age. This is a scatter plot of age and then salary, right? So let's say these are the values. So initially the salary is less, age is less. So age will increase, increase, increase. And then,
So can we say this age and salary are a bivariant?
yeah, the relationship. So this is one of the bivariate analysis. So bivariate analysis basically means that whenever you are comparing two columns, any column, right? So it could be age, salary, it could be age and gender, anything. So bivariate analysis is basically whenever you are comparing two columns, so column 1 and column 2, right? Using EDA, basically using plots like scatter plot or stacked bar graph. There are so many plots. That means that this is a bivariate analysis. Univariate analysis means that you're only looking at one column. Basically, you're looking at C1 separately first, and then you are looking at C2 separately. In bivariate, we combine both of them and then try to see how is the relationship between C1 and C2. Is that clear?
Yeah.
So there are so many. So these are the things that are done before. So the reason I'm explaining all this is these are the things that are done before your machine learning, right? So these are the things. How do you explain? So let's say if you're making a dish, right? So these are the things you keep ready, right? Before you start the stove, right? So you keep, let's say, garlic, ginger, all of these ready, and then you go to your machine learning. Now, Mani, what is the reason I can directly go to machine learning code, right? I can just start writing all this. Why do I have to do all this, right? So if you do not do this in a procedural manner, if you do not do this in a procedural manner, what will happen is, let's say if your machine learning algorithm is performing bad, which means that it was supposed to predict fraud and your algorithm is saying this is non-fraud, right? Now, since you have directly jumped from 0 to 4th standard, right? So since you have directly jumped from 0 to 4th standard, you do not understand the basics of addition, multiplication, and division, right? So if I ask you what is the relationship between column 1 and column 2, let's say let's try to work together and fix this machine learning model and see why this is not working. So can you answer me what is the relationship between C1 and C2? Since you have directly jumped from 0 to 4, you do not have any answer, right? You will say that I'm not really sure what is happening. I just directly went to machine learning and then I use this algorithm and it is not working. But if you done this procedure, it's like basically following EDA and then data cleaning and then you go to machine learning, you'll directly say, Mani, this is the plot I have showing the relationship between C1 and C2. So let's see if it has anything peculiar or something, right? So that these are the things that will try to help you in building a confidence. So it will basically give you all the means and all the tools once you follow this procedure, right? So the procedure is basically first steps is you'll follow your data cleaning steps. So basically all those data cleaning will generally relate to dealing with NA values, okay, dealing with NA values. And then let's say if you want to convert some columns into categorical and then some columns into your continuous. Okay, so this is your data cleaning steps. Some more data cleaning steps will be like, let's say you are given a data in Excel. So let's say XL, SX. All right, so you can some people generally convert to CSV, which is easy to work with. Okay, so this is something. Or let's say I have 10 GB of data. Right, so let's say I have 10 GB of file. Okay, then you will use some of the sampling techniques, right? So you will use some of that sampling techniques to make this 500 MB, right? So you will start working with 500 MB. Now, what is the reason? We have learned, right? So in statistics, we can infer so many things of the population just by working on a sample. So in practice also, I would not say you will run into these issues, but if you run into this, do not build a model on 10 GB of data. There are two simple reasons. The first reason is it will take 1 week actually your laptop will crash most of the times, and it will be like super slow, and then it doesn't make sense. So all you have to do is try to draw a sample which represents this data as much as possible, and then build a machine learning model, and then you can basically see how well this performs on this original data set, right? So these are the next problem I'll explain. Okay, so that basically this is all the things that you'll do for data cleaning. The second step is basically your EDA. So as I've explained earlier, EDA is just trying to give more insight and more understanding about your columns, right? So you will use this, you will help this, you will achieve this in the form of plots. Number of plots, money, is there a limit? No, you can do as many as possible. The more the better, right? As much as understanding you have. There are two types. One is univariate, where you plot only one column. There is bivariate, where you plot two columns and then compare them together. Then you start basically entering your machine learning. Then you start understanding money. These are the steps are done. Let me build a machine learning algorithm, and then all the different things that will come later. Okay, so is the procedure clear? Like, how do you approach that in a systematic manner? Any question?
One question. In bivariant also we use a scatter plot only, right?
We also use scatter plot is one of
Like in correlation, it is usually through a scatter plot only, right? And if we want to draw a graph for two variables, so then two columns, then one will be at X and one will be at Y, right? So it will be like scatter plot only.
So you can do scatter plot. You can do stacked bar graphs, right? Let's say this is day 1. Let's say this is day 2. So there are so many plots actually. So this will be this. Let's say this is day 3. So let's say this is your relationship between the column day and gender. So let's say this is males, and let's say this is females. On day 2, there are less males, but there are more females. Let's say there are more females. Right. So let's say on day 3, there are more females, like a lot of females, but then there are less males, right? What do you have on your x-axis? You have your time axis, right? So let's say this is your time, right? So one of the column is time, let's say date. What is the other column? Other column is gender, right? So other column is gender, right? So this is called stacked bar graph, right? So this is called stacked bar graph. So this is called stacked bar graph. What is it trying to do? It is trying to understand the relationship between a column, which is a time series, basically a C1, and trying to understand the relationship between C2, right? So likewise, there are many options for doing bivariate analysis. Is this a bivariate analysis? Yes, because you are comparing or trying to understand the relationship between two columns. So this is a bivariate analysis, right? So this is a bivariate analysis, okay? Now what is your scatter plot? So scatter plot is generally used when you want to compare two continuous columns, right? When you want to compare two continuous columns, right? So that is what scatter plot will basically give you. So when you have C1 and C2, is this bivariate? Yes. We are comparing two columns and trying to understand, okay? We are not doing anything. We're just plotting them and seeing, is there a pattern I can figure out, right? So something like that. So is there a pattern you can figure out here? Yes, money. As the days are increasing, maybe not. There is no clear pattern here actually. But here, let's say if you do a scatter plot, so the scatter plot comes like this. Right. So let's say this is your, age. And let's say this is your height. Okay. Now what does this give you? So this gives you, right? So let's say after certain age, right? So what do you understand here? So let's say the age is 30, let's say 31, let's say whatever, 50, 40. So what it means is after certain point, the observation or the understanding, the deeper understanding I have between the column age and height is after certain age, I can see that using this scatter plot, which is a bivariate analysis, okay, which is a bivariate analysis, I can see that after certain age, the height is not increasing, right? So height is constant, right? So this is the deeper understanding that I got by plotting age versus height, right? So like that there is many options actually. Scatter plot is one of the plot. So you guys know, right? So there is histogram, there is pie chart, there is what else? So there is any other plots? What all plots did you guys do in your pandas or visualization? Did you actually do any plots?
Box plot.
Box plot is for outliers. Okay, box plot. Okay, anything else?
Bar plot.
And that's we have to do when classes are going on.
Wait, parallel classes are going on?
No, in the evening time.
Yeah, it's kind of revision for
Yeah,
pandas and numpy.
Oh, okay. That is new. Okay, so you guys are taking evening classes for pandas and numpy revision. Okay.
Yeah. The first classes weren't that much useful, so we are taking retake classes from Abhishek.
Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. So these are the basic plots there. So as we
Mani, if you proceed, then please answer two quick questions. So
yeah,
the univariate and bivariate analysis are also called as feature engineering.
no, feature engineering is something I'll explain. Yeah, what is
Oh,
next?
okay. Other question is that you told us one before in one of the classes when we do the sampling from the whole population,
Hmm.
then we take 70% of the data for our ML preparation, algorithm, and 30% to test it. What was that term called?
Yeah, I'll explain both of them. So
Oh,
the first question I forgot. Second question is test and train. What is the first question?
nothing only. This one, feature engineering. I will ask.
Yeah. So feature engineering. So feature engineering means so let's say I'll explain the difference actually. So let's say you have a bank data set. So column 1, column 2, and column 3, right? Now, what does this column 3 represent? Column 3 represents the let's say your every month expenditure. Every month you spend 20,000 on credit card, 25,000, 15,000, let's say, and whatever. What is the C2? C2 is your salary, right? So every month salary will be fixed. Let's say if it is 30,000, 30,000, 30,000, hopefully it's fixed. Now, what is the C1? C1 is let's say your debit. So ATM withdrawals, you say. So ATM you went and then you took 2,000 cash and then you took 500 cash suddenly. Sometimes you took 3,000 cash. Now, what is C4, right? So C4 is not given in your C4 is not technically given in the data set. So the bank.csv is only till here. Now I'm creating a C4. So the C4 formula goes something like this. So C4 is basically uh, C3 minus C1 divided by C2, right? So I'm creating a new column. But Mani, how did you come up with this formula? So if you see this formula, this will be your effective spend, right? So what it means is in banks, you can say this is your credit score, right? So banks generally calculate credit score based on the amount you spend on credit, the amount you get, and the amount you spend on debit, right? So banks are creating a new column actually. So this column will represent your credit score. So let's say your credit score is, let's say 700 for the month of January, 720 for the month of February, and then let's say 650 for the month of March. Now, let's say if you are applying for a loan, right? So they will not look at these three columns, right? So they'll not look at these three columns. They'll just do an average of this and say that, hey, this guy has a good credit score, which means that he will spend more and he's also earning a decent amount. So let's give him a loan, right? Now, this column, is it a part of your study? Not really, but this column is being feature engineered. So feature engineering means using the business domain knowledge. So using the business domain knowledge and also your observations in EDA will basically create some more new columns, right? So some more new columns, which are combination of earlier columns. So which are combination of C1, C2, C3 or C2 and C3, right? So this is a little bit dependent on your business domain. Now, this is the reason I've taken an example of credit score, right? If I just tell C4 equal to C3 minus C1 by C2, Mani, why did you only do this? Why didn't you do 2 times C2 and then let's say 4 times C1, right? So that questions will come. But if you take into consideration the business domain knowledge from a bank, they have some formulas because some formulas already are defined. The credit score is between I think maybe 650 or 600 to 800. So based on that, they have some formula. They will use this formula to get this. But what is being done here? A new feature or a column called C4 is being engineered from the goodness or the best of the best, right? So instead of just dealing with 3 columns, I can just look at this column and say that, okay, loan is approved or not, right? Think of this. If C4 is not there, I need to verify, okay, is he spending more on credit card? Does he even have money to pay for the loan, or is it all those calculations I have to do for each month? But since I've created a new feature which is called C4, which is a combination of all the concepts from C1, C2, and C3. So this particular C4 is called a new column or a new feature. Column is nothing but feature, guys. So column or feature are same. So new feature. So this is engineered from the previous column. So this is called your feature engineering. Okay, so that is your answer to your first question. Now the second question. So the second question was, let's say if I ask you, if I give you a URL for 10 GB of data. Okay. Now my point being, Mani, this is the original data frame. Now in reality, what happens is generally people don't work on 10 GB of data unless that is a deep learning problem, or you have like GPUs and you have super rich, powerful servers and all. In general, whenever a big data set is given to you, you first sample it into, let's say 500 MB or let's say 1 GB. Right? Now, why is that? Because what my laptop cannot work on 10 GB because my RAM is only 4 GB. Right? So my MacBook RAM is only 4 GB. Now, when I load 10 GB, it will crash, saying that Pandas is crashed or whatever. Now, what this example that I've explained is a practical scenario, or like a once you work on bigger data sets, you will understand that whenever you want to work on extremely large, so this is an extremely large data set, then generally people first step before even doing anything, they try to sample it to some small data set. Now they forget about this part. They think that this is their original data set, and then they do, what are the steps? Data cleaning. So data cleaning, they'll do EDA. So they'll do EDA. Okay, so they'll do EDA. If possible, if they have some business knowledge, they'll do feature engineering, remove some features, and then they'll build a machine learning model. Now, coming back to your test and train split, okay, they will create test and train among this 500 MB only. Okay, they'll create test and train split among this 500. So they forgot in the first place, they have a data set which is 10 GB. They forgot about it. Okay, they will basically create 70% and 30%. Okay, 70% of this, which is basically, how much is 70%? 650, I think. 70% of this is not 650 or 850, I think. So
350.
Sorry, 350. 350 MB is basically your 150 MB is your 30%. Now, why are we doing this, Mani? This is because to understand, or basically to test, right? So this is your test. So basically this is called your training data set. So this is called your training data set, and this is called your test data set, right? So this is called your test data set. Now you will only build a machine learning model using the training data set, and all the thing that you do in test is basically see how well this particular machine learning that you model that you built using 70% performs on these unseen data points. So these are new data points for your machine learning model. You'll just try to compare. So let's say your original result were 4 and your machine learning model is giving 3, and your original result is 2, your machine learning model is giving 1.9. So it seems that it is doing pretty well in predicting the results. So then you can say that, Mani, so this algorithm is doing well, right? I can go with this algorithm, right? So these are the steps. Now this sampling is different actually. So this sampling is different, and this sampling is also different. So this is mainly done for one reason and one reason, to basically build a machine learning model on 70% of the data. And then this 30% is done to basically test how well this particular machine learning model performs on this unseen data points. So these are called unseen data points. So model didn't even have a chance to look at this. So basically you will have a real value and your model will also give you some output. So you'll compare how well these predictions are. And based on that, if this is perfect and if you feel this model is confident, then you go and give it back to your 10 GB data and see ultimately what happens. That is your ultimate workflow. Now the reasoning is simple. 10 GB laptops cannot handle. There is no reason for us to work on 10 GB when you can build a model using 500 MB and it performs reasonably well. Then you can just try to test it on 10 GB of data. Now, when will you use 10 GB? If you are working with deep learning algorithms like image processing. Let's say you want to estimate the expression in my face or something. Then also 10 GB is a lot. You can just directly work with 1 GB. But these things you will know once you keep on working with different types of data sets. Then you will understand, okay, 10 GB was unnecessary. I'm basically crashing my laptop. Let me just take some portion of it and then work. Is the questions clear?
Yes, thank you.
So the reason I'm not starting a machine learning is once I explain all these questions, you guys will have some clarity. Then you will be like, okay, so this is what means. So these are all the practical aspects to it, right? So one thing is you learn something in class, and second thing is you do something in your office or whatever, like projects, right? So there will be some difference, right? So those differences I'm trying to highlight before we start your machine learning. Okay, so that's your basically your what do you call the conclusion around your statistics, all the things that you have to remember in statistics. What is the procedure when you're trying to build a machine learning algorithm? So what are the steps that you have to take in your this thing? So let's come back to these slides now. So let's start with machine learning. Now, can anyone tell me like what is machine learning?
Yes, one question. That 10 GB to 500 MB. So do we just break or do we use those stratified sampling or any of those methods?
Yeah,
And are there packages to do that?
Yeah, you have to use proper sampling techniques. You have to use, let's say if your data set is, sales data set, right? So then you can do I would say, what I would say is whatever the sampling technique that you have done. So make sure that this is representing your data set. So how do you check that? So let's say this is your sample, right? So let's say this is your 10 GB of data. There are advanced sampling techniques also, but let's not go there. But simple example I'll give you. So let's say how many columns you have. Let's say you have 3 columns, right? So C1, C2, and C3. So let's say C1 is basically your number of sales. C2 is basically your date or month, and C3 is basically your what else? Let's say some column like what can we do? Let's say number of products sold, right? So let's say your date range is varying from, let's say every month from 2010. So every month from 2010 till 2020. So 10 years of data you have. 10 years of data you have. So first column is the total number of sales, and the second column is the month, and the third column is the number of products sold, right? So this is a sales data set. Now if you want to sample it, right, so you have to sample it in this manner. So you have to apply some techniques here, because if I just take a sample which is only from 2010 to 2011, then that is not a good proportion of the sample, right? So we all agree on that, right? Because there are so many years, you only considered some portion of it, right? So whenever you take, I think you should be able to take a random sample, but whenever you take a random sample, keep in mind that your time axis is spread across these 10 years, right? Now, is there any better way of approaching this? Yeah, there are better ways. So let me explain that. So if you guys remember all the sampling techniques, you'll understand this. So let's say what was this first column? C1 is basically number of sales. C2 is basically time axis, the month. C3 is basically your number of products sold. Okay. Now, what was that sample? You select at each interval, let's say 1 and then 3 and then 5 and then 7. What was that? Was that stratified? No, that is
No, systematic random sample.
systematic random sampling. Correct. Good. So if you do a systematic random sampling of, let's say, 1st January you do, June you do, okay, January you do, June you do. So let's basically you get how many? 20 rows you get, right? So from how many you got, let's say 10, 120, 1200. So let's say 120, you got 20, right? So let's say if this is daily data, then you'll have 120 into, let's say 30 or something like that. So you have, so I hope you guys get the idea, right? So here, since I have a time axis, I would go with systematic random sampling. So systematic random sampling, because if I test my understanding here, so instead of me focusing on one time axis, instead of me focusing on 1 year or let's say 2 years, I feel that when I draw a sample which is basically spread across all the years, this will give me a fair sample. This sample will be a more or less better representation of this original sample compared to other samples. Let's say if I just take the last year, which is basically 2019 data, that is also not a good sample. Let's say if I do random sample and then I end up with years only 2010 and I miss out on three years. So let's say I get data from 2010, 2013, 14, 15, 16. So I missed out on the data, which is basically 2 years, 11 and 12. So in this case, if I have a time axis, I would go with a systematic random sampling. So like that, you can basically apply all the knowledge that we have learned. So we learned random sampling. We learned systematic random sampling. I hope you guys remember this. So we learned stratified sampling. So stratified sampling, we learned cluster sampling, right? So these are the things that we have learned, right? Now let's say if you're looking at geographic data, let's say you're looking at geographic data and then you have location. So location is Martali, and then you have some data, let's say height, age, and number of cases, Martali, and then BTM. So this is, here you have to do a cluster sampling. So basically this is one cluster. Basically you draw some sample here. This is another cluster. You draw some more like this. So what you're doing is, whenever you want to find a smaller sample from this set of records of all the areas and all the results, you will take, let's say 5 rows from Martali, 5 rows from BTM. So this information you need to understand. Basically, you need to have some understanding of your data set. Then you can choose, okay, which sort of sampling techniques will basically apply whenever I am trying to draw 500 MB from a 10 GB of data. Or does it make sense?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, so let's go back to the question. Any other questions before I start?
Yeah, Mani, columns are also called as features, right? Like as you said now. So in few places I've also seen it as variable. So what are the other names it has?
Okay, so there is this problem also. This problem is because when you read different things, you will come across different notations and different people calling different things. Variables, I don't know if you can call columns as variables. But as far as I've learned and as far as I've seen and looked at, so columns, or either you can call it as features. I'm not really sure if they call them as variables.
Predictors.
Predictors, you can say, I don't know, like it depends on the author, right? So whatever he wants to convey, right? But in general, keep in mind, so there is a convention that I think everyone follows. So capital X stands for all the data frame of features. So it could be like this, right? So capital X. Small y stands for your target variable. So let's say this is your target variable. So this notation mostly everyone follows. So people, let them call them, let's say, predictors, variables, columns, features. As long as you understand capital X and small y, that is fine, right? So this I've seen because even in hypothesis testing, if you are following some other book, they will say that this is reverse, right? So hypothesis will not consider equal. So like that. So as long as you understand the concept, I think it should be fine.
think X variables are also known as independent and Y is known as dependent.
Yeah, that is also there. So there is independent variables, there is dependent, there is features, there is target variable, there is what else? Columns, values, all those things. Okay, so a lot of notation, guys. You don't have to worry about these, but keep in mind. Okay, let me simplify that. So whatever is used, whatever all the things, it could be column, it could be independent column, it could be variables, or it could be columns, features. So whatever is used for building your machine learning model, I will say that all of them are features. Right? So that is that is the word that I'm going to use. Right? So these are the features that I'm trying to use. Okay, so this could be columns, right, in your case. Right? So whatever is being used or fed into your machine learning algorithm, so these are all called your features, right, or columns, right, or variables or independent variables. Okay, all these are the different words you will come across. Okay, I hope I answered your question. So whatever is going inside your machine learning, whatever is being fed as an input to your machine learning building model. So machine learning procedure, like wherever you are building a model. So all those are called your features or columns or basically.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so.
Mani, sorry for the interruption. Just one more question from my side. Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, so we have 10 GB of population and 500 MB of sample, right? So we will be doing data cleaning, data wrangling, and EDA part in our sample data set, right?
Correct.
Yeah, then we cannot directly deploy our machine learning model into our population because we have cleaned everything in our sample data set only, right?
Right. So that's why I told, like, you don't deploy it. You again go back and test it on 10 GB of data and see how well it performs. Right. I didn't say that you will deploy it. So what I'm saying is, so now there are different scenarios actually. So if you want me to explain the correct answer, so I need to explain different things actually. So the different things is, okay. So the different things is basically the word called big data. Now, what does big data mean? Can anyone tell me? So what does big data mean?
3 V's.
Sorry?
Lot of data, like
Variety of data, volume of data.
Okay.
To handle large data.
Something that my software cannot handle.
Okay. So in simple terms, big data is nothing but, so let's say whenever you have, for example, in our company, we get data, 1 day's data. If I just take 1 days of data, it comes out to be how much? It comes out to be sometimes, it comes out to be, I think, 50 GB, I think, or something. 50, let's say if it is 150 GB of data 1 day. Okay, let's say if I want to do analysis for the past 7 days, I'm looking somewhere around close to how much? 1900. Today my math is gone. Okay, let's say closely it is 900 GB of data. Okay. Now this is only impossible for my laptop. Now 7 days is, I cannot even say, let's say if I say, sir, manager, my laptop cannot take 7 days because it is 900 GB of data. Now the idea where you cannot store. So let's say 7 days are gone. Let's say he says, can you work with the past 15 days? Past 15 days. Now this is 2 terabytes of data, right? So 2 TB. GB, it became TB now. Okay. Now if I go to 1 month, then it will become 10 TB, right? Now, if you keep on, if you look at this exponential growth or this humongous amount of growth of this data, what you have to understand is the concept of big data. Now, what it means is I cannot store this so I can store this 150 GB of data in one server, right? So one server or one laptop. But slowly, if I just go to 7 days, I can keep 900 maybe, right? So nowadays we get 1 terabyte of laptops, but after I cross this, there is no way for me to store 2 terabyte, right? So I will lose some data. Now, big data in simple terms is whenever you have to distribute your data among servers, right? So whenever you have to distribute your data, so let's say you keep 200 data here, 200 data here, 200 data here, or let's say 500 here. So the maximum is 500, 500 and 500. So let's say after 1 week, another 500 comes. So you'll keep it here. So these are all your servers. So server 1, server 2 and server 3 and server 4. So the reason that I'm explaining, all this is, now what happens in real life is when you get 10 GB of data, 10 GB of data, and then you draw a 500 MB of sample. Okay, you can do this. So for using this, you can use sklearn packages. So let's say sklearn packages can work on 500 MB, and you build a small tiny model, and then you try to test it on this 10 GB of data and see how well this model works. If it works well, then all good. If it works well, then money, you don't have to work on this 10 GB. I worked on this 500 MB and I was able to build this model. If it doesn't work, then you have to go to your, so this is where your big data will come into picture. So if it doesn't work, then some people take a bigger sample. So the bigger sample that you will take is 5 GB of data. This is also a sample, but it's 50% of the sample. Here it is only 10%, you can say, or 1% or 10%. Now, what is this change? What changes is basically the way you apply your machine learning. You will start writing your code in PySpark. You will start writing your code in PySpark. Okay. Now, what is PySpark? PySpark is a big data framework. Okay, big data framework where this 5 GB is basically present as 1 GB in 5 servers. Okay, 1 GB, 1 GB and 1 GB and 1 GB. Okay. Now, when will you come here? Of course, when you have done your experiment using a smaller sample and run it in your laptop and see how well this results perform on 10 GB, then you will be like, money, this procedure or this technique or this framework is not working out. I think we need to go to our big data frameworks, right? Now, big data frameworks are costly, expensive and time taking. But the difference is the data doesn't remain in only one server. The data remains in 4 servers. Right? So 1 GB, 1 GB. What are you doing? You are doing again machine learning only, except that before you are using sklearn Python packages, now you'll use PySpark, which is a Spark-based, Python-based Spark applications you will build on this 5 GB of data. Now you can compare. So this is a representation like 50% of the data. Then you will be saying that, money, this option didn't work out. Then I'm going to PySpark and I'm building my PySpark model, machine learning model on larger amount of data. Here in this case, it is 5 GB of data. Since my laptop cannot handle, I'm using Spark. There are a lot of things. Again, this is not a class on Spark, but so this will work on a lot of servers, and then I'll build a machine learning model, and then I can compare it back on my 10% of data. Now, is it clear? What is big data and when will you transition to big data, and then what sort of procedure is followed here?
Yeah, got it. And whenever we are doing, whenever we will be deploying a model to population, so again we need to do this cleaning and all those things in our sample set. Sorry, in our population set, correct?
Yeah. So there is some more backstory to that. The backstory is simple answer is you don't deploy a model once. You leave it because it's a continuous process, right? So the continuous process, because how do I explain? So let's say you build version 1 of model, okay, version 1 of model. So there are multiple options, right? So when you put it outside, so when you put it outside, meaning when you put it on the web, right? So when you put it on the web, then you collect the feedback, right? So you basically always see how many times have I given the correct answer and how many times have I not given the correct answer, right? So how do you measure that? There are different measuring techniques, right? So let's say if I'm Instagram and I've built a recommendation engine, let's say a recommendation engine. What is recommendation engine? Every person has now 2000 friends, right? So in Instagram, they're following 2000 people, right? Now, which one should I show on the top, or how do I rank these photos so that this person will spend, let's say every day is spending 10 minutes. how do I improve my recommendation engine so that he spends 11 minutes? So this is called your retention time. So these are all called your evaluation metrics, right? Now this is in production, by the way, guys. So production meaning you put it outside to the world. Okay. Now, once you see this, if you see this, your metrics are increasing, then you say that this model is performing well. Okay. Suddenly something happened. Let's say the app is crashed or something happened, right? So let's say some users are losing, quitting Instagram, something happened. Now your retention rate will come to 9 minutes. So people are spending little bit less time. Now people, let's say competition came. So let's say there is one more app called, let's say, some other app, ABCD app. So this people are starting to use this app. So your retention numbers will come down. Now, what does it give you? It gives you an indication that the machine learning model that you have built in June is not applicable anymore. It is time for you to rethink this model, collect the data set, again build the model. So that is how you generally monitor the apps or generally monitor the machine learning algorithms, which are outside or which are present in the outside world or outside when you put it in deploy or production. Okay. Coming back to your data cleaning steps, in general, yes, you have to do your data cleaning, but you keep it very short, meaning that, for example, in case of this, so in case of Instagram, your machine learning model, okay, your machine learning model, so let's say you have image 1. So let's say you have image 1. Let's say you have image 2. Like that, you have 2000 images from film stars, then you have politicians, then you have friends, then you have brands. All of those are your following. So like that, there are 2000 photos ready to be shown to you. What this machine learning model will do is the data cleaning step will be done as a transformation to this image, right? So this image will be, let's say this image is cropped, right? So basically this is cropped to only this manner, right? So this is the information where you are focusing on. So you're just taking the center part of your image. So the edges you're cropping off. So this is one of the data cleaning technique, right? So this will be done little bit above your machine learning. So the answer is yes. So before sending it to your machine learning model, so your machine learning model will be expecting the data in some format. It could be image, it could be tabular, it could be natural language processing, anything. But you will make sure that there is a data cleaning step, which is called transformations, which are called generally transformations. Once those transformations are done, then you will send that data to your machine learning model. Okay, so that transformations also will apply whenever you are put the model into production, and then those data cleaning steps and all those are required there. Okay, so the simple answer is yes, but it will be done in a different manner so that this is quicker than your when you're building a machine learning model. I hope I was able to answer partially at least, because this is actually a study in itself actually. So this is what happens after you build a machine learning model, right? So this is called ML ops, right? So ML ops, right? So which means that once the machine learning model is built, now where do you put it? How do you put it? How do you monitor it? What are the steps you take before? What are the steps you take after? How do you know when to change the model? How frequently do you look for the data? How do you collect the metrics from this data? So this is not our, I mean, like, this is outside the scope of this course, but we are looking at building machine learning models. But there is another study or another field nowadays emerging called ML ops. So which actually deals with how do you keep the model alive? How do you make sure that this model is applicable, and when do you take down this model, all those things. Okay, so that's but the simple answer is all the data cleaning steps that you have done for building model, you'll apply those steps whenever you're predicting or using, or whenever you have deployed the model online. So these steps you will basically use it again.
Mani, one question. This course will prepare us to be to apply for jobs like ML engineer only, right?
Right. ML engineer, business analyst, data analyst, and there are so many names nowadays, right? So data scientist, decision scientist, all of things. So this will give you the crux of it, but then there are some, so there are some nitty-gritties nowadays, right? So people want a lot of things, right? So if you read any job description, they'll say 3 years experience in Python, 4 years experience in Java, then machine learning, deep learning, TensorFlow, PyTorch, this, that. But if you understand the concepts, then yes, so you will be able to build the machine learning models, and then you can hand off to engineering teams where they will take it to production and then they will do the other job. Right? You don't have to worry about it. But if you're working for a smaller companies, you might have to do both of those. You will only build the model, you will also take it to production, right? So both these things are present. It depends like what type of company you're applying for. Does this company have so much money that they have separate teams called engineering teams and data scientist team, or is it like just two guys sitting there and then doing everything? So it depends on that. So what are the responsibilities that you have? Basically depends on company and the structure that you have. For example, if you apply to big companies, so they have clear teams, right? So for example, in our team, my responsibility is more on, let's say, sometimes, let's say for 6 months, I build the model. The next 3 months, my responsibility will be to work with the engineering team and then bring it online, right? So that everyone can use it, right? Now, that sort of structure is there. Let's say if I take my previous company, everything I only did. I mean, not I, our team did. For example, we built the model, then we took it to production. We work with the Android and iOS team to make sure that the app is working well. So all those things. So it depends on like company to company structure, like how companies are looking at this problem. All the time, you can say my responsibility was mainly building model, but it depends. Companies, some companies want it end to end. Some companies are like, okay, you just focus on building the model, remaining other teams will take care. So that sort of structure. Did I answer your question?
Yes, Mani.
Okay. Nowadays the lines are blurred. Actually, they are expecting everyone to
Because sometimes when I see this description JD, it's quite it just frightens.
Yeah, I know. I told you, right? Nowadays they want IT department, not 10 people. So one guy, they wants everything. He will only do everything. But as I explained, if that is the case nowadays in startups, but as long as you understand basics of statistics, basics of machine learning, and you are able to build those models in Python, remaining everything, you can convince them, hey, look, you know what, I can build these things. The remaining things I can definitely work along or do it along as a job, right? So unless you build a model, you cannot take it online, right? It doesn't make sense, right? So you cannot have a empty model online. Once you build only, then you will learn how to bring it online. So all those things are, so job description, you can say 60%, if you are able to match, then you will be able to convince the whoever is taking the interview that, see, these are the things I know, this is the work I've done, see, these are the models that I've built. Now coming back to your deployment, there are some courses along with this. I think, I don't know if it is there in your course. You can actually deploy them directly on cloud services like Azure, Google Cloud.
Dockers and Kubernetes.
So all those things, not Dockers and Kubernetes, just directly push the model online. So that sort of structure is there, so that it is easy for you to say that I know this, and this is just like an extra thing that I also need to know. But since these cloud services are making it easy, I just do it like 4-5 steps and then I upload it, right? Or let's say if your company has a specific engineering team, like let's say 50 people, you generally do a handoff meaning I built the model works like this is the input you have to give me, this is the output, and I'm giving this to you, you guys put it out there. You can keep it in Android app, iOS app, website, wherever you want. So different types of structures are there. Okay. So today a lot of discussion is going on. I hope you guys are not bored. So let's get back to theory now. Can you guys explain, right? So can you guys tell me what are the ideas that you get when you see this word machine learning? Right. So what is machine learning, right? Why is this hype? What is this jobs market and all this? Why every company is saying AI? And what is the difference between the words AI, machine learning, big data, Hadoop, what else? Deep learning, right? So what are the differences? So there are so many burning questions that we have to answer first. So first question is, what is this machine learning, right? So what is this field like? Why is this coming up? What is the reason now only? Why not 5 years back or after 5 years? Why only now?
Because volume of data was not there, such kind of data earlier.
of data was not there, I would say yes and no. Let's say volume of data was always there with Google.
Not until unless they came up with big data.
Not until and unless they came.
Yahoo came actually. Yahoo came with big data.
Yahoo came up with big data back in 2009 or 7, I think, if I'm not.
6 or 7 it came.
So, but the deep learning came after 2010, right?
Yeah, man.
Will we be able to get jobs in next 2-3 months? Yeah. So this is a. So even if I am also, let's say if I want to apply, I'm not sure. So the thing is actually it depends, right? Now I'll give you my honest perspective on this question. So the question is, how is the impact after COVID on IT jobs in data scientist, analyst, and in next 2 to 3 months, right? So now, as you guys know, right? So there's a extremely slash of jobs, right? So a lot of jobs are reduced, right? Now, unfortunately, this data science partially falls under that R&D slash. Let's say for company to survive, website I would say is very much needed. But data science, maybe if it's a very small company and they do not have a lot of money, then they might sort of think in the direction that maybe we might have to keep this project in the back burner. For example, that is what is happening in our company also. For example, some of the projects they thought are going to add value, but are sort of like an experiment or like a R&D type. They're sort of keeping it behind the scenes now, and then they are only focusing. Right now, I see that the companies are only focusing on jobs and profiles which are actually giving them money, right? So they are not willing to take any risk in this pandemic, right? Now, this has some effect on data science because this sort of, this is the hard truth. So this sort of field is sort of experimental, you can say, because if it works or if it doesn't work, you don't know. Whereas when I build a website for a company will use it, right? So company has to use it because that's like your standard software engineering. But these data science and all these are sort of, you can say, I would still say it is a little bit more of R&D. Now, I would not want to disappoint you guys. Now, keep in mind that this is a little bit transition, right? So nowadays, the number of jobs are only less. Now, if you ask me specifically machine learning jobs, yes, it will be less only, right? So since the total number of jobs have gone down drastically, now, yes, it will be a little bit difficult now. Now, that is what is happening for everyone, right? So it is difficult. So the companies are either firing, companies are reducing pay, or companies are saying, for example, if you take big company like Google has told that they are not hiring for the rest of the year, right? So the 6 months they are not hiring. Such a big company, right? Google, you guys can understand, right? Now, for example, our company has told they are not hiring for next 6 months, right? When they are not only hiring, now it is applicable for machine learning, it is applicable for website building, it is applicable for Android application. All the jobs are affected. So equally, this is also being affected. Now, in 2 to 3 months, that is my understanding. So this will continue for another 2 to 3 months unless we have some good, brighter picture of the economy. So to answer that question, in 2 to 3 months, yes, it will be difficult, but it's a good idea for. So let me put it in this way. Now, let's say you apply for a job. Let's say you apply for a software engineering job. Okay, so let's say there are 5 candidates. Now, job is all about 2-3 things. So one of the main thing is competition. Let's say there is candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3, candidate 4. Now, let's say the job is basically on software engineering, but the candidate 3 says that he also has experience and understanding of a new emerging field called machine learning, right? Now, let's say I am taking interviews, then C2, right? So C2, C3, C4, and C5. Let's say for the second round, and then C2 and C3 are selected. Now, my preference will be with C3 because along with software engineering skills, let's say he is good at whatever job he is doing, he also has some extra knowledge, right? So you have to portray that, hey, you know what, whoever is taking job or whoever is taking interviews, that I also have extra skill, which is an emerging field, which can be useful for your company. Maybe not now, but I do possess those skills. So that is what happened with me. So I've sort of explained to my manager that I also have skills building products. At the same time, I'm also good at machine learning. So these skills, having these skills will definitely keep me ahead of other candidates who have to learn and then take some time. And then, so he understood, okay, this guy has some extra skills. Now you can basically portray your profile in that manner. So that also will be beneficial. Now, learning a new skill is always, it is always beneficial, right? So it is not a waste of time or waste of effort. But I hope you guys understand the situation of the market is grim, right? So it is not good in any way. Apart from being a freelancer, let's do one thing. Let's take these questions around 10 o'clock so that I can answer this. Okay. So these are a little bit off topic. So I'm happy to answer these questions, but let's try to cover some theory today. Is that fine?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. No, I've asked this question thrice. So what do you guys understand from machine learning, right? So the question was, what is machine learning? Why is this coming up? And why only now? Why not in 2010? Why not in 1993? And why not in 2020? Sorry, not 2020, 2030 or whatever. But why only now? So I got half answer. The half answer is the data is increasing, right? So the amount of data is increasing. But what do you mean by increasing? Whoever told that, can you elaborate more on that? Right. The question is simple. The question is why machine learning, this industry boom is happening in past 5 years. Why not in 1990? Why not in 2035? Why only now? Right.
There was no such demand that we need to
Because of
process.
technologies also.
Okay, because of technology, there was no demand.
Yes,
Demand.
This algorithm did take example like logistic regression. It did exist long back.
Right. Now, but why? Why did this? Why are we all learning this, and why is this happening right now?
because now we got enough computation power to process these data, whatever we process. And there are multiple technologies to available in the market to process,
To
like
store
cloud
the data
technology.
and to process them.
Correct. So the one of the first answer is correct. So humongous amount of data, right? So if data is only not present, so there is an explosion of data, right? So data is increasing. Nowadays, you just remember or you just monitor your own phone. How many times you send, how many messages you send, how much of data you consume, how much of calls, how much of WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, whatever apps you're on, how much data you're consuming, right? So the data is exploding exponentially, right? Not even exponential, it is more than exponential, right? So a few years back, we just used to send a SMS that, okay, good morning or good night, but now we have unlimited messages. I can send you unlimited messages in WhatsApp, right? There is no limit actually, right? You can think about it. Before we had SMS restriction that in a day you can only do like 100 or 110, right? So for that you used to pay like 100 rupees or 200, right? I hope you guys remember those days, right? It was like 4 years or 5 years back only. Now internet has been playing an important role. So internet has actually brought this data explosion, right? So every minute, every second, there are millions of photos being uploaded in Facebook, millions of Google searches, millions of people coming online in YouTube. Just look at the YouTube, right? So YouTube has become like a fish market now. So many videos. Everyone is making videos, right? So many videos, millions of videos are coming every day, right? So that was the case with TikTok, right? People are putting so many videos, right? It's just, if you think about it, it is just it's a crazy idea, right? So how much amount of data is being pushed online? Now, second important factor is, if you see the price of the phones. Now my old laptop has 4 GB of RAM, right? So let's say that was 50,000, right? So let's say that is 50,000. Let's say this new laptop, let's say this is 8 GB of RAM, right? Now 16 GB, right? So 32 GB, right? So you can see that computation power, right? So for example, our phones itself have become so powerful, right? So before, I don't know if you'd say 3-4 years back, maybe not 3-4, like 3-4-5 years back, whenever you said my Android phone had 8 GB RAM, you would say that, okay, are you paying like 50,000 or 60,000? Now the phones have 16 GB, 32 GB, and 10,000 and 15,000. You can get those phones. Now, what effectively the chip manufacturers have done, like Nvidia and AMD and Intel, they have played an important role, that they have brought the computation powers. Like these are all chips, right? So these are all small chips, Intel i7, i6, i5, i9, i10, whatever. So these chip manufacturers also played a role, that they got the computation power, more computation power for cheaper price, right? So you basically got smartphones which are very, very smarter than, nowadays smartphones are even smarter than your laptops, right? So iPad Pro and all those are smarter than your laptops. Now computation power has become cheaper and more available. More availability is also there. Internet and then the amount of data. So the two reasons that this machine learning industry has come into picture is, one is explosion of data. One is explosion of data, and the second one is cheaper computation, right? Cheaper computation. Cheaper computation means more computing power for cheaper rates. Cloud also played a role. For example, if I want on-demand GPU, right? Now, if you want on-demand GPU for free, you can just go to Google Colab. If you want on-demand TPU, right? Nobody in the world is even offering this. If you want on-demand TPU, so TPU is teraflops, right? So teraflops. Now you can go to Google Colab and open it, and it is free, right? So free of cost. So this is computing power, which is very, very cheap or free, right? Nowadays, before 3 years back, when we bought a GPU for our machine learning or deep learning problem, so that was costing us around 16,000 rupees. 16,000 rupees. Now I can do that for free in Google Colab. Same thing, right? So just 3-4 years back, the industry has changed drastically. So these are the reasons that are playing a very important role for this machine learning and deep learning, all those technologies coming ahead, right? Now, these are the reasons. If someone asks you like why this machine learning industry is booming, right? So there are two main reasons. One is cheaper compute, and second one is the explosion of the data. If you do not have data, there is no data science, there is no machine learning. You do not have anything to even do in the first place. Now, what is the difference between machine learning? What is the difference between deep learning, and what is the difference between artificial intelligence, and what is the difference? People again confuse this with big data. What is the difference between big data?
AI is superset of all these things.
Okay, so AI is superset. Okay.
And all these are.
What is it? So this is AI. Okay.
Yep.
So what is machine learning and deep learning?
Deep learning is extension of ML.
Okay, extension of ML. But like I want more concrete answers actually.
More concrete. Like we deal in ML, supervised, unsupervised.
ML is subset of AI.
Yeah, ML is subset, right? So ML. So you have your. This is your deep learning, and this is your. I might be wrong, but let's say this is.
We DA, DL, ML.
But I think you will see online maybe difference, but that's fine. But I want the difference actually. I want the difference. Anyone has any answer, or you can guess? You can.
Yeah, in deep learning, basically we will be relying on the neural networks, either artificial neural network or CNN.
Okay. What about RNN? You forgot RNN.
Yeah.
There are so many actually. You can just say neural networks. Okay, so deep learning, mainly the algorithm that you will use always is a neural network. Okay, there are 10 types of neural networks. Okay, now this is where I'll focus on. This is your next course or next topic. So neural networks, if your algorithm is always neural network, and in general in deep learning you require a lot of data. Because neural networks are data hungry, meaning that they want a lot of data. First of all, in the first place, they want to give a lot of data. Okay, so neural networks, so basically deep learning, if you say that I'm a deep learning engineer, whenever you are working exclusively with neural network as the only algorithm, because neural network has a different types, right? So in itself, so there are like 10 to 15 types. But if your core algorithm that you're using always is neural networks, then you can say that this is deep learning, right? Now, what is AI? So AI, you can keep this as like engineering, right? So engineering itself has so many streams. So engineering has chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, computer science engineering, like electrical engineering, right? So engineering is basically a study or like a bigger group, right? So that is what this superset means. Superset means artificial intelligence. If you want the formal definition, the formal definition is uh, it exhibits, what do you call it, exhibits, AI is anything which actually exhibits intelligence. So exhibits intelligence means without being telling, right? So without being telling, so a small baby, so let's say a small baby exhibits intelligence, right? So he's also artificial intelligent because every day for like 1 to 2 years, right? So you would have noticed that small babies observe a lot, right? So they observe and start learning to walk, right? So parents, I think they teach a little bit, but the real learning is by the baby itself, that he keeps on looking at his parents, how they are walking. So he'll understand that the procedure for walking is basically you have to put your first leg and then the second leg, right? So now it becomes very easy. But if you think about it, if you break it down as a baby, then you'll understand that there are steps and a procedure. First, you have to get up and then put one leg forward, and then you have to switch your leg, right? So like that, right? So this is a procedure that the baby's brain will understand and learn. So you can say that this baby is exhibiting AI, meaning that he's learning or he's trying to learn something by just observing or consuming this data, the visual data that he's learning from his parents every day. He learned, okay, this is how my dad and mom are basically putting their legs forward, and I can also get up and start. Of course, in one attempt he will not learn, but he'll make mistakes, he'll fall down, make mistakes, and then after some attempts he'll understand, okay, so this is how you will start learning or walking. Now similarly, AI is basically wherever there is a car, if you are familiar with these cars, right? So what do you call, what is this,
Self-driving.
these self-driving cars are basically not in India but outside, where they sort of learn how does a road look like, how does a lamp post look like, how does a green red signal look like. They do not learn how does a cat look like, they do not learn how does a dog look like. They only learn how does the obstacles look like. So what does obstacle, let's say you're going, self-driving car is going. So it could be anything, it could be a car, it could be a whatever, like it could be a deer or whatever. It will recognize that there is an obstacle, right? So it will learn that there is an obstacle and then stop, right? It will just come to a stop, right? Now, so humans are actually like 10 times higher than that, but self-driving cars, so what is that exhibiting intelligence? It is exhibiting intelligence by learning obstacles along the way, right? So basically, whenever you see a self-driving car, it actually takes a lot of input. It actually takes input on the front cars, it actually takes input on the side cars, it actually takes input from your red green light. It actually takes, suddenly if you run in front of that, it will actually take sensory input, right? Infrared and all that. Some object is nearing me, so I have to suddenly stop here. So all these things are basically exhibiting intelligence, right? So these all come under AI. Any other examples that exhibit AI? Even baby is AI, guys. So it might sound weird, but yeah.
Games is part of AI, so.
So games is a good example. That's a good example. So let's say if you are playing any strategy games, now, for example, you are playing a car game, right? So this car is going front and right. Now, if you sit and program, right? So if you sit and program, if the car is before, you have to go behind. If the car is left, you have to take right. So all these things, if you keep programming, I don't know if you guys know, the maps in the games are like 17 GB and 15 GB. Now it will take 10 years to write all these code. But instead, if you just program, or if you write a machine learning code or a deep learning or artificial intelligence code where you tell the game that this is the strategy that you have to apply when the car is going front, you have to go up behind, right? If you say that figure out for yourself or sort of follow the car, then you can say that, okay, you don't have to program like, okay, if the point is like, let's say Martali Junction, you go right. So since the whoever is playing will go right, so the car will also follow right. So you didn't explicitly program that, okay, at Martel you take right or left. If he's taking right, then the car will also follow him. So what you're trying to program here is, how do you exhibit intelligence, right? So this sort of intelligence, like follow and then go in reverse direction or follow ahead or crash them, all those things are basically your AI, right? Any other examples? There are a lot of examples. That's the reason we are learning all this. There are a lot of examples. In everyday's life, in every person's life, there will be at least 5 to 10 products which has machine learning and artificial intelligence. Any other examples?
The AlphaGo game.
AlphaGo game, okay.
Google search.
Google search, good. So Google search nowadays, I don't know how many you have observed. 6 months back, they do not have questions. So let me go and explain what I mean. So if I type this, what is machine learning? Right? So what is machine learning, right? So these questions, I don't know, people remember this box was not there. Like 6 months back or 1 year back, this box was not there. You can verify that, right? So even these videos were not there, right? So you can see this Q&A was also not there, right? So these are all the these are all the places where machine learning is being used, right? Now I can name 10 products. So one of them is your Alexa and whatever Google Home. So their speech recognition is happening. Then your Gmail, whenever you would have noticed, right? Gmail smart reply has come even in your LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn's is a little bit not so sophisticated, but Gmail's smart reply is excellent. And what else? Then your phones, right? So whenever you take a photo, right? A lot of phones nowadays do some sort of automatic. They will figure out like
Location tracking.
yeah, so they will sort of make it good looking, like even in iPhone or Android, when you take a picture, even if you shake little bit also, it will figure out, okay, this guy is shaking his hand, so let me make it the photo still, right? So then your Instagram, right? So Instagram
Geotagging also is there.
geotagging. So whenever you upload a photo in Facebook, they will say that this person of your photo looks like your friend. Google Maps, Alexa, gestures, say a robot, so many things are there. So every product has some sort of machine learning and artificial intelligence in it nowadays. So that is the reason we are learning this. So these examples are also given here. So what are the practical examples of machine learning in daily use? Email spam detection. By the way, in Google, there's a lot of spam detection happening. Yeah, person and face detection, age detection, gender detection, all of these are machine learning. So image recognition. So image recognition is happening. So then automatic speech recognition. So whenever you type Google now, or let's say Siri or whatever, whenever you speak, right? So the waveform of audio is being understood, and then there's a lot of machine learning going in behind. Now, these are all like 10 to 15 examples. So every day these examples are increasing. So for example, when you upload your resume, right? So there is some sort of artificial intelligence to figure out, okay, this guy understood this guy doesn't understand. And then whenever you are lot of places, right? So a lot of places, many places. For example, even in remote, right? So LG has a remote where you can press that and then speak, right? You can speak that, okay, I want to watch Avengers movie, right? So you're pressing and speaking to a remote. Now remote is also understanding that voice, and TV is able to give that suggestions, right? So whenever you watch Netflix, right? When you watch 5 movies, the 5th, 6th recommendation is that, hey, you know what? I think you will like this movie. Whenever you watch 4 videos in YouTube, then also, so everywhere there is machine
Recommendation engines.
Flipkart, Amazon, like everywhere there is machine learning. Yeah, everywhere Amazon, Alexa, Fastly. Now the point is, like, there is a boom, right? So there is a upward trend. A lot of applications are using this. So this is a good time to learn all these skills. Okay. Now if I break it down, so there are 3 parts in your machine learning. So I hope the answers are clear. So big data means where anything, right? So big data technologies, some of the examples are Hadoop, Spark, Cassandra, then there is Hive, right? So all of these, what they are trying to do is, the data doesn't reside in one server, right? So the data actually resides in multiple servers. So this means this is big data technology. So big data means the data is distributed, right? So this is big data. Now, artificial intelligence is anything that exhibits intelligence, right? So it could be a self-driving car, it could be your speech recognition, or it could be your whatever. So all these are basically artificial. Machine learning is without being explicitly programming. So without being explicitly programming, if you are able to figure out, right? So if you are able to figure out without being explicitly programming, if you are able to figure out the outcome, then that comes under machine learning. So AI is even broader than that. AI means exhibiting intelligence, right? So machine learning means without being explicitly programming, if you're able to figure out the answers, that means that is machine learning. Okay, coming back to your deep learning. So deep learning, you can say as an extension of machine learning, where the algorithm that you'll use is always neural network. So the algorithm that you'll use is always neural network. Now, what are the reasons? Two reasons that this industry is booming nowadays: because there is an explosion of data and the computation power is becoming cheaper and cheaper and more available. Okay, so these are all the different words that the media jumbles here and there and people get confused, but you should be not confused. So you should be clear what is what. Okay, now coming back to your machine learning. So even in machine learning, there are different types of algorithms. So there is first one called supervised machine learning. So supervised machine learning. So this is your supervised. The second one is called unsupervised machine learning. So unsupervised machine learning. And the third one is called reinforcement machine learning. So reinforcement machine. Okay. So in case of supervised machine learning, so the examples are basically predicting if the customer will pay back a loan or not. Let's say, is there a fraud or not? Is this a cat or dog image, right? What I mean by supervised is you always have a target variable, right? So you always have a target label. Actually, you always have a target label, right? In case of customer data set, if you guys remember bank data set, the exited was a target variable, which means that the customer is still in the Airtel or he left Airtel. If you guys are working on fraud, so the fraud column means yes or no is your target variable. If you are working on image data set, so the target variable says that this is a cat picture, this is a dog picture, this is a cat picture, this is a dog picture, right? So you always have information about your target variable. Then this falls under supervised machine learning algorithms. Okay. Now, what is unsupervised machine learning? Unsupervised machine learning is your examples are clustering, right? So, okay, I have 50 students. I want to cluster them in 3 groups, right? So I do not know males, females, or whatever. I just clustered them. So basically, I'll cluster them into, let's say these guys are in the front, these guys are in the center, and these guys are in the back. Or let's say you can cluster these guys are, let's say, experience 5 years, these guys are experienced 3 years, and these guys are experienced 2 years. So this is your clustering. So there is no notion of target variable. Now that is your unsupervised machine learning. So can anyone tell me what is reinforcement machine learning?
Refeeding your algorithm with the weights.
Refeeding your algorithm with weightage.
Difference or delta will be there.
Okay, I think you are almost there. Any examples?
Self-driving that will give the values to your actions.
Google search. Self-driving car is an example. Okay.
Google search where like we keep on feeding data.
Google search is a complex actually. You cannot put it in one bucket actually. They do a lot of things in one shot. Have you guys seen this? So whenever there is this, I don't know if you guys know this. So in Chrome, there is a game, dinosaur game. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
How many people saw that? So dinosaur game Chrome. So whenever your internet is not working, so there is a dinosaur that will come. Right? You guys remember this game, right? Have you seen this game, T-Rex game? Right? So basically you can play whenever your internet is not working. In Chrome, you can play this game. Now, what is the relationship with reinforcement learning? So the relationship with reinforcement learning is, in reinforcement learning, there are 2 things. So one is your environment. So this is your environment. And one is your objective. So what is your objective? Your objective is to increase this score, right? And what is the environment? This environment, what this guy is the agent. So this dinosaur is the agent. And these are your obstacles. Forget about obstacles. It could be anything. Now in reinforcement learning, so you will have 2 things. So one is your environment. So this environment is made up of cactus trees. Okay, so this environment is made up of cactus trees, and it will have an objective. So what is the objective in this environment? The objective is to increase this score as much as possible, increase the score. So what is that? So the reinforcement algorithm learns that whenever there is a gap here, so this is where I have to jump, right? So this is what this reinforcement algorithm will learn. So will learn, right? So similar to your self-driving car. So whenever there is an object in front, so it will understand that there is an object in front. So it will learn that I have to put a brake, and it will put a brake, and then it will stop at a safe distance, right? So reinforcement learning has two things. One is environment and one is your objective, right? So what is the objective in this example? And agent actually. So this is the agent. So this guy is doing the job. So this guy actually has to jump here and walk here and then start jumping here. Like that, he will keep on jumping. Now, what is this reinforcement learning? So this is the environment. So the environment is basically this road and this cactus. And what is the objective? The object is to basically score as much as possible. And what is the agent? So this is the agent. Okay. One of the algorithm is called Q learning. So Q learning. So Q learning. Okay. So this field itself is a little bit complex. So one of the algorithm that you will see come across in reinforcement learning is called Q learning. Okay. Now you need three things: agent, environment, and objective. So if you have these three things, so this is called your reinforcement learning. Okay, is reinforcement learning clear? It's a very specific or a specialized machine learning category, right? So you will have real-time decisions, game AI. For example, AlphaGo comes under reinforcement learning. So all these things come under reinforcement learning. But most of the times you will be working on problems, which is basically your unsupervised machine learning and supervised machine learning. Okay, so now I'll stop here, guys. So we have discussed a lot today, but I hope you guys got the understanding of what are the concepts that we need to understand in statistics. What is the relationship of statistics concepts in machine learning? In real life, what are the different technologies that companies use? What is the different setting, right? What type of company, what type of teams that are present? What are the responsibilities nowadays companies are expecting? And coming back to your machine learning, why is this machine learning booming now? And what is the definitions of deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data? Coming back to your machine learning, what are the different types of machine learning algorithms? You have supervised machine learning algorithms, you have unsupervised machine learning algorithms, and you have reinforcement machine learning algorithms. So these are the things. This was more like a talking class, but tomorrow we'll do linear regression, so you guys will find it interesting. So I'll close the class here today. If you guys have any other questions, you guys can.
Mani, one question. Any examples related to manufacturing industry?
Manufacturing industry, there is one example where you can detect the faults, the number of faults. Right. So in manufacturing industry, what happens is there are big machines, right, that are building products. Now, how do you detect if some product has any faultiness, or how frequently these faults are going to happen? Can you predict like next month how many faulty pieces are going to come? There is one data set. If I find it, I'll share it with you. Okay.
Okay, Mani.
So there is one machine learning problem actually there. You can detect the faults. You understand faults, right? So
yes.
Right, so
that is supervised learning. Is that?
Yeah. You will take image data, or sometimes you will take the product dimensions, right? So let's say you are manufacturing a chair, right? So the chair will have some dimensions. Either you can upload the photo and build a machine learning model to detect if this chair has some defects. Cracks, you'll see cracks, right? So that is the manufacturing problem. You can use machine learning. So to detect, is there any crack on this product, right? So anywhere, is there a break, or is that what do you say, like how do you say it in manufacturing? Is it not assembled properly, right? So is there any gaps? All these places like Shell and all, right? So these companies use machine learning for that.
Okay. Thanks, Mani.
Mani, can you tell a bit about freelancers?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. What was the question, Ashutosh? Let me go back to the chat. Yeah, freelancing. Actually, freelancing. Even I'm curious. So, what are the other options apart from being a freelancer? What other options? So, what options? Freelancer, I'm not really sure. If you can get some freelancer projects, well and good. That's really good. Now, the way I see it is, if you are good, right? So you will get some projects, right? Now, what are the other options, right? So other options nowadays, the demand, someone has asked like, what is the job opportunities? If you, so what are the, so this is more like a career wise, you can say like, how do you increase your chances, right? So the way you can increase chances is, for example, if you have some exposure to some of the cloud provider, right? It could be Google, it could be Amazon, or it could be Microsoft. Now, I would say that pick Amazon because AWS. So AWS has been around for many years and is very stable, right? Now, let's say if you go back to AWS, so if I go back to AWS, so let's say AWS console. So let's say if I go to AWS management console. Okay, so this is how my cloud, basically AWS actually is way ahead in cloud providers. Even Amazon.
Screen is not shared.
Huh?
Screen is not shared.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so if you see this, right, so they have a separate domain, right? So if you go to all services, so if you go to, where is machine learning? So if you go to machine learning, so you can see these all these options, right? So all these options, if you go to machine learning SageMaker. So what I'm trying to explain here is, okay, my account is not up. So let's say if you go to Dialogflow, right? So let's say Dialogflow. Okay, now actually, so what I'm trying to explain is these skills will be complementing each other. What I mean by that is, you will say in your resume that I know what machine learning is, I know how to build a machine learning product and all that. If you also tell me that, okay, I know how to build a chatbot in Dialogflow, now you can come to my company on day one, you can actually build a chatbot for me and put it online, right? Now there is other process. The other process is you can write code in Python, you can build a product, you can put it online on your servers, you can see, run into problems, fix it and all that. Now what these cloud providers are doing it is, they're trying to building machine learning products as easy as possible. So if you go to GCP and if you type NLP, right? So if you go to GCP and NLP, so there is a very powerful products from Google Cloud, right? So let's say if you're building a chatbot, let's say if you're building a text analytics platform, let's say if you are building speech recognition, right? So let's say if you're building anything, right? So first thing is, let's say if you analyze this, now Mani, where is machine learning here? There is machine learning, right? You guys can see that it has automatically figured out what is the Google standing for. So Google stands for as an organization, right? Now you are a person who knows how to, what is the machine learning going on behind the scenes. You are also a person who knows how to use these products out of the box, right? Instead of you building your own NER classifier, it will take like 1-2 months. You're already figured out, right? You already figured out that this particular sentiment, right? So this particular sentiment, and you know how to use this Google Analytics APIs, right? This will give you a lot of edge actually. So in my opinion, if you want to complement your skills of machine learning, if you can build a simple chatbot using Google Dialogflow, you can write that on your resume that I have built a simple chatbot. So you can build a chatbot for COVID-19 related questions. So you can ask, what are the symptoms? The chatbot will say the symptoms will be like cough, then breathlessness, or loss of smell, loss of taste. How many countries are affected by COVID-19? They'll say these are the countries. It's a very simple chatbot, very simple chatbot. You can put it online. Right?
There is API are there.
Yeah, all the APIs are all there. It is very easy for you to, I wouldn't say easy, but it is good idea for you to start building products using these cloud providers. right? Now, is there machine learning? Yes, there is machine learning because it is automatically figuring out, even if you type symptoms COVID-19, still your answer will be whatever, breathlessness and cough and all that, right? So what I'm trying to explain is the theoretical things, the concepts that you learn, and then if you add some of the skills like trying to build a chatbot using Google Dialogflow, or you know how to use AWS SageMaker, when you write these skills in your resume, the company will know that, okay, not only he knows theoretical knowledge, he also knows that how to apply them in practical scenarios also. Right? So that will actually give you a lot of what do you call, lot of edge when you are in the competition with, let's say, 5 people or 10 people.
Sir, in AWS, there is a difficult like private or public network. So is this related to us? So we have to learn this is also private or public network and all these things.
Cloud is when you enter cloud, there are 20 things that come to your picture. One is your IAM, one is your cloud, one is your virtual machine, one is your cost, all those things. Right? That's what I'm saying. So so if you go to your my point being, they're always there, right? So let me give you an example of Dialogflow. Actually, that will dialog.
Sir, I have one more question. So how we can relate Google Analytics? Is this part of API?
Google Analytics is something else actually. Google Analytics is mainly to capture how many people are coming, from which country they are coming. If you have a website, that's what Google Analytics will give you. Like basically all the analytics of users, IP address, MAC address, which country, how many times they came, how many times they didn't come, like what type of IP address, what type of comments, what time they are coming. So these are all analytics. Analytics means like you're trying to collect some data and analyze what is that, say, you understood, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I'll show you analytics actually. So these are the analytics. You can see, right? So 18 people commented, 3 people commented, and if you want to see the stats, so you can see that all time there were 25,000. Today there were 4. Yesterday there were 10, and last 7 days, so there were nothing. So let's say if I take last 6 months, and you can see this. These are all analytics, right? So let's say on this particular post there were these many this ones, right? So these are the traffic that is coming. Right, so all different types of analytics. So these are all called your Google Analytics. Right? Coming back to your Google Dialogflow. Now I actually created one Dialogflow chatbot. Actually, it's very simple, right? So that's what I wanted to explain this, because here you don't have to, let's say. Right, so you can see, right, I built a simple, let me show you actually.
So like we can explain in our resume, we have prepared chatbots at home, as we can say like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Not only you learn machine learning, not only you understand the concepts, but using Dialogflow, you actually built a chatbot, simple chatbot. Like if you see here, this is a very simple chatbot. But let's say you can build a chatbot about yourself. Like, what is your name? Your chatbot will say, my name is Mani. What is your education? You will say, I am 5 years experience. What are your skills? I know machine learning, deep learning, and TensorFlow. Again, if you ask a question, what is education? Like, what is your education, or what type of education you had? Again, you will get answer like 5 years experience. Very simple chatbot. You can just share that URL in your resume. Whoever is looking will know that, okay, this person understands machine learning. This person understands how to use Google Dialogflow, which is a online cloud product. And also he understands how to build it, right? How to build it and put it out there, right? Put it to the world, right? So these skills will actually give you a lot of points whenever someone is trying to hire. They actually hire, they are investing a lot of money in you, right? 1 year of money. So they will see that among the competition, this person is like has a lot of information. This will look like a very simple project, but this will give you a lot of points, brownie points, you can say. I hope you guys understood like the reasoning.
Yes.
Okay. There was a URL actually.
Yeah, even we can integrate Dialogflow with our FB Messenger or
Yeah, a lot of things. A lot of
Telegram.
anything that is easy to do and simple. I would say that just go ahead, build it, write it in your resume. It will always be helpful, right? So always it will be helpful. Anyhow, actually, I'm not getting the URL, but yeah, so you can actually you can explore all these actually. So you can explore all these. You can directly connect with Facebook Messenger or Slack. All these. This is a very simple beginner project, I would say. Yeah, this one. Right. So you can ask questions here. Right. So hi, you can say hi. Say hi. How can I help you? I want to. How I can find IMEI number. Let's say if I take this also. Right, so IMEI number is displayed under menu settings about, right? Very simple chatbot. You can just give this URL in your resume somewhere. They will also go and figure out, okay, this guy knows how to build a simple chatbot, right? So companies actually like these skills where you're not only saying that I know machine learning, but you're also showing me that you can build a simple chatbot using Google Dialogflow, right? So that sort of structure.
Okay.
Right, so you can say again, hi, hello, hi. Right. Right, so you guys get the idea, right? So this is out there. Anyone with this URL, I can say that I know I have built it. There is one thing like I can write it in my resume that I built a chatbot using a Google Dialogflow. The other thing is actually building it and then say that, okay, this is out there. You guys can tell me how what you think about it, right? Same goes with your GitHub also. So when you see your GitHub, if you go to your GitHub and then see your profile, let's say if you share this, so you can see that, okay, this guy knows he's doing something, right? So he's doing some code, right? He has done some code in February, March, April, May, and June. He looks like he's doing some code. So let me see his repositories. Okay, so you go here. Let's say I'm trying to look at my profile. Yeah, looks like he's doing some code and like ImageNet. So looks like he is doing some machine learning projects. So there is TensorFlow, some data science. So there is some. So these are the projects he's okay updated 2 days, which is very active. Right, so these are the things that will actually definitely improve your chances a lot. These projects definitely you can write it in your resume, right? So okay guys, so I'll close the class here today.
Okay, sir.
Mani, which topic will you teach on Monday?
Linear regression.
Okay.
Mani, just a query, like from when can we start the Amazon machine learning and SageMaker?
You can actually start. Okay, you want to start maybe after like 1-2 weeks you can start exploring that.
Okay.
You have some idea what machine learning algorithms are there, then you can start experiencing trying it. Maybe 1 week or maybe 1.5 weeks.
Okay.
Also, can we start Kaggle after 1-2 weeks? Participating in Kaggle?
Yeah, you can participate in Kaggle. Once you know some algorithms, right, then you can definitely start. Now you guys don't know any classification algorithms, right? So
After a couple of weeks, maybe we could start.
1 week or 1.5 weeks, then you can, let's say if you learned linear regression and logistic regression, you can go ahead and then write that code in Kaggle and see how well your algorithm is performing.
And then we put that project into our GitHub.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. That's what I'm saying. You have to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'll close this. Yeah, bye bye.